Now, some people are born in a weaker situation and they're having to fight against limitations. They're having to grow even though they can't do this or can't do this. They're weaker and there's a bigger struggle around this. Or what one might say, less achieved, but it's not really less achieved. It's just that every day there's experience gained. Some people start off kind of lucky with Saturn. Some people have problems right away. Sometimes the people with the problems right away accomplish the most later on in their life. But it's important to recognize this process and to begin to understand what happened during that process, because it's so foundational in terms of your attitude to approaching anything, to beginning anything, to starting any commitment, whether it's a marriage, with buying a home, starting a business. You're going to start with this instinctive process that you started with from the time you were born. Now, so this whole process really of this instinctive development, the first 7 years of our life, we're just becoming the combination of our parents. We're becoming the combination of their egos, their attitudes, their sense of responsibility. We're just sucking it up, the good and the bad. And if they're not there, we're sucking up that they're not there. It's affecting who we are. We're just like a dry sponge sucking it all up. It's going in. What's accomplished, what's responsible, what's respect, what can I do, what can I achieve, what can I do? Like, yeah, it's differentiated with boys or girls, but it's really like boys are just running around trying to do anything, run things, push things, see how, but younger girls have a much more intelligent or are quicker to perceive and think about things, make association between things, and see the interactions between family members and know how to relate to each other. Different types of accomplishments, different types of development. But it's all instinctive. It's just, we're just being it, we're discovering it. It's a new exploration with its restrictions, delays, restraints, efforts needed. The effort needed to crawl, the effort needed to stand up, the effort needed to walk and run, the effort needed to get clothes on to get out of the house or to go to the park or to whatever. And then at the same time, you might have brothers or sisters or other people around interacting as well. So there's a lot going on, but it's not, the child is interreactive, but not so much making it happen. It's just developing. And as it develops, it's better or worse, and hopefully everyone's glued into it and working around it. And that's the miracle of our, till we get to 7. At 7, the next, so this pretty much goes all the way from being born, going through, growing up, getting your teeth, being able to eat, and then finally losing your teeth and getting your second teeth. The second teeth is, it probably happens somewhere between 5 and 7, 6 and 7 usually, and it's the so with the second teeth, you're on another level of Saturn. You got bigger responsibility. If you lose another teeth, it won't grow back again. At the same time, you can have, if in your instinctive development phase, if you had a big fever at certain specific times, it can affect the growth of the second teeth, and your second teeth can come in really difficult based on something that happened a few years before when the second teeth were forming. So the second teeth is a physical adjustment of it, but really we've just dealt with our parents as our parents and our brothers or sisters as our authorities around us, as the restrictions, the guidance of the people telling us what to do or whatever, till we get to school. Now, sometimes from 3, you get to 4 and 5, you start getting into preschool or junior kindergarten and stuff, so you get some social development beforehand, which is useful, because at 7, at the second square, you're really having to struggle. Like, you've changed from just absorbing influence of your parents being the Saturnian factors or babysitters or whatever, to you now have teachers, a school, you have a structure, you have authority figures outside of you, have time demands made on you. There's going to be homework, there's going to be rules you have to follow. So by the time you hit this first bend of Saturn, you're having to run into authority figures outside of yourself. So you got to admire kindergarten teachers, because our grade 1 or kindergarten teachers, they're getting kids. They're the first authority figures that have to get the kids from the zoo of their family. And they can immediately see who's messed up, who's not, and who I have to work with more to try and get them feeling good and secure about the world and being in the class. But there's the mechanics of how to get to school, how to get back, when you can go on your own, when you can't, who takes you, are you on time, are you late, what clothes you wear. I grew up very poor. I never even knew I was poor until I got to grade 1. And I saw other people have a lot of things I didn't have. I didn't really care. But I distinctly never had a concept of poverty or poorness, even though we were really poor and had to get assistance at times. And my dad was sick, and it was a lot of different. My parents split up and came back together. So like I have Saturn Pluto conjunct in my chart. So my Saturn has a certain harshness to begin with. But when we're looking at this, you're just looking to see what happened in your life and how this process developed to anchor it onto Saturn. So you're getting your experience to determine how Saturn works. So it's your second teeth. It's your backbone, your bones, your strength, your physical strength, how tall, how small, the size, the shape you are. But it's taking that size and shape out to school, reacting to kids, having authority figures, running into rules, into authority. Wow. So when you get autistic kids who are very solid, very deeply self-absorbed, they don't often have a sense, sometimes they don't have a sense of boundaries, so they can be very smart, but they don't know the edges of relating. They don't know when an action is going to hurt someone else or not. Some situations, but just they don't have that sense of boundaries. But it's a new sense of boundaries having to be learned and having to be lived with as Saturn squares your sun. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a diaper. You got running into other people. You got other people making demands on your time. It's a challenge. It's a healthy challenge. It's right due. It would be more difficult to not have those things. By the time you're 7, you become the combination of your parents. Your attitudes, your responsibilities, you just sucked it up and became it. By the time you're 7, you deserve a break. You got to spread the blame around a bit. You got to run teachers, other people. You can't just leave it just on what your parents did or didn't do. So even though we're looking at a thing or an adjustment of authority on the waxing square, it's a vast number of experiences, but it really is. Where in your school are your parents together? How are you relating to teachers? Is there problems? What can you call them? What don't? Can you be disciplined? How are you working with time? And for a mom, this is the hassle to keep things on time, to keep things going. To have to be disciplined to get there and to get back and to pick you up and to do things. It's a lot. Like even though you're running into other authorities, there's a lot more work on it. In one way, mom gets a bit of a break for the afternoons or during the school day when the kids are at school. But there's still a pile up of other things getting them to school and getting back. But it is a change. There's a little more a stage of separation from mom. Like the whole process of life, we're born, we're 2 souls in one body before we're born. And then when we're born, we're separated. We start from this sense of being separated from where we felt we belonged. Without having to take care of, everything was taken care of and safe, seemingly so in the womb, unless you think of diet. And germs, but still basically that. Then we separated from that and we have to grow up in spite of that. By the time we get to 7, we've got to grow up instead of out of the womb, it's out of the cocoon that we grew up in. The cocoon of our first 7 years of our early upbringing. And these are the parts we often don't remember or don't think about, but eventually we constructively redevelop and we see this path leading to this reaching out of authority. So I didn't know we were poor till we went to school and we didn't have the same clothes as some of the other people. I never hardly even thought about it. It was whatever. But there certainly were other people making judgments of other things. It's so I just show you my chart. Well, we can do this later. We can get into our own charts later, but just for me, the early one, Saturn went backwards and forwards, was the difficult formula, and the parents having trouble holding it together. And they split up for a while, and they got back together, and there was a lot of difficulty during this time. And just for there's a texture there you want to get. So when they were having their difficulty, my grandparents on my mom's side moved in. They were dying, but they moved in, and we probably took care of some of the finances for a while, and for a year or so they were with us till they died. And deaths, different things all happening in those early years. It was just at the end of the war. But by 7, running into authority, geez, in that first year, I never went to a year in school where I didn't get strapped to run into brutal authority. I got strapped in grade 1 for kissing girls. I can't even rationalize it, but there it was. But and then there was always the severe disciplines or difficulties around going into it. I didn't see it. I just had to go and do and go and survive it, whatever, and interrelate. But there were also some other big achievements going on. So I had 3 hits of Saturn squaring itself during that. And during this time, we moved from the country to another city to start school in another city. And we got a house on the riverfront, an old house. It was a poor house, but it was still a great house. But for me, for kids, it was cold. It was cold. It was on an old wooden house, but we didn't own it. We rented it, but had to go to school, and with no new friends or anything, or no friends at that time, starting just straight at that time. And so I had the teachers I thought were a little severe, but I had one teacher, a gym teacher, and he was a Russian guy who escaped from Russia, and he'd escaped from the Iron Curtain back then. It was a big deal, but he was teaching gymnastics. And so we had them for gym. But before, I don't know how this happened, but by the time I was halfway through grade 1, I was so good in gymnastics, he had me on the grade 11 gym team because they needed someone to throw around and flip around and very dramatic things, and I wasn't afraid of anything. So on one level, but my main memories of this, I don't remember the performances so much. I remember being in the bus, being in the lockers, being taken this way, that way with all these big guys. But it was an accomplishment of sorts that I could do this. And so that was one good teacher, but it was just responsibilities and dealing with things. So this was, and parents were getting back together and trying to work things out, and who knows? It's just roots. But this adjustment, everyone has it at that Saturn square. Just in coming out of the instinctive development where you're becoming your parents to being, see, you start reacting to teachers, and you go to run into other authority figures. Then you come home and your parents are reacting to those authority figures. So you get authority figures on both sides. You got the ones at home, and you're going out seeing things differently, and they're reacting to it, and you're developing a sense of authority, respect, responsibility. What's responsible, what's not? What do you listen to? What do you hear? These are all in this second phase from 7 to 14. I call it a phase of mental development because you're really going to school, you're learning, you're studying, you're learning language, you're making sense of things, and you have authority people teaching you how to do these things, and you're making sense of the things, you're seeing, finding friends, you're seeing what you can do, what you can't do. And this mental development from 7 up to 14, grade school, those 7 years, that's this mental development where mental attitudes, patterns of studying, patterns of learning are established, patterns of relationship, pattern of interrelating. So from 0 to 7, you're becoming a combination of your parents. From 7 to 14, you have your parents reacting, you're running into other authority figures outside of the home and coming back to home with experiences of running into those Saturn factors, the homework, other things, and the rules. And you're coming back and parents are responding to those parents, and you're getting a double level. It's another level of sophistication. You're getting Saturn on both sides. It's not just at home anymore.